by calling 1-877-625-3724. And I'm going to repeat that 2 more times. For those of you who are shy, I really want you to call and introduce yourselves and ask Betty Sue Flowers a question. 1-877-625-3724. And I'm going to say this one more time. The call-in number for its rainmaking time tonight is 1-877-625-3724. Now, while we're going to stand here and pray that people have the courage to call, I'd like to ask you a couple other questions while we're waiting. And it seems like rainmaking has a lot to do with waiting, Betty Sue. I used to think it had to do all with doing. And I would say 10 years ago, I was a nonstop doer. Now it's listening and waiting. Now, I would say that I've refined my skills. The question I have for you now is, what right now is a couple of the single biggest challenges that you have faced in your life to date, even with your incredibly gifted capability, multifaceted life, wonderful family life? What are some of the challenges that you have faced that you would like to share on the air with us tonight?
Well, the challenge I'm facing at the moment is a challenge about how do you solve large problems like the healthcare problem in the United States from the grassroots. Something like that takes so much coordination so that we think only the government with policies either undoing something or doing something can solve the problem. And certainly private entities have no incentive to solve it individually, money-making entities. So how is it that people could form, what's the form of organization that allows solutions to come from the grassroots?
It's a great question.
And that's what I'm trying to do with healthcare at the moment. So I have a lot of initiatives going at the library and elsewhere, and we're just starting, but we've made some good progress, and we'll see how this works. It's just an experiment, and these are experiments in social leadership, grassroots leadership, and grassroots policymaking. And I just want to see, it's very, very, very difficult. I just want to see how it can be done.
I had an opportunity to sit with Thich Nhat Hanh 2 years ago when he was in San Diego. And I told him that I asked a question, and I held this question for 14 years. And I said it sent me all over the place, and that I was scared to keep asking these kinds of questions.
And what was the question, Kim?
Well, I'll see if I can remember the full gamut of what I told him. But basically, what would it take to establish a solution delivery agency that would spawn a new generation of products, services, industries, and solutions for humanity that would also provide the finance, that would fast-track the financing of all of these things? What would it take to have that come together? And I didn't say it as eloquently as I wrote it and have been holding it, but basically, what would it take to spawn a new generation of solutions for the world that have got to get to the world and must be financed? What would quicken it, expedite it, and break through the scarcity and the bureaucracy of many existing solutions not being able to be financed in either the research or development stage, to expedite the time frame from conception to full delivery? And I'm really sometimes worried about myself that I'm perplexed, and I'm still working on that puppy. But I will tell you, he said to me that if all I did was continue to ask that kind of a question, that it would do a lot of good in the world for other people to join me in asking that question. Mm-hmm. Because solutions that are not getting funded, not because they're bad or the people are bad or some other reasons, or they're not the right politics, or they're not in the right place, or they're, quote, underfunded, many solutions like the one you're talking about, what you were talking about has to do with the original conceptualization of making healthcare available and solving that dilemma on a systemic, individual and systemic level, right?
Right.
This has to do with the conceptualization having to do with making financial means available, bypassing what you and I would consider traditional investors, the whole scenario that's been written about traditional investors and the SEC and the power brokering and the big expensive attorneys, how do we take it at a grassroots level and put investing on an individual level, power at that level? Now, I know there's many people around the world who've tried different scenarios from different types of funds and this kind of fund, and Dr. Muhammad Yunus did his organism and organization of a big key of that, but there's another key into it. And it has to do, to me, with the collective transmission of money. But anyway, part of it is a structural dilemma that I've been working on for 14 years. The other one is a consciousness and conversational level, trying to get people to get that it's possible. So, for example, on a concrete level, if I say to you, look, Betty Sue, it's possible that we could get 100,000 people to wire $500 to Solution X to fund it, develop it, protect it within 24 to 72 hours. That's remarkable. Without having to have an SEC offering, pay an attorney's firm $100,000, all the barriers and hoops and hoops and hoops. So basically for 14 years I've gone in and studied the whole kit and caboodle, how everything in sight works about that. But I will tell you that the next step in putting it, actually bringing it all together, it's a very, very big feat. But the question itself took me to all these places to try to solve it, to better understand what's here. What's the myth that's here? What's the story that people are telling? And it's part of it is what you're in, the economic myth that we're all in, that you have identified. And it's structured very tightly in finance, in investing, and the structures and the language and the people who influence who gets to move money, who should move money, what is considered risk, and what is even considered of value. That's also a conversation. So anyway, the questions that you're asking and the questions that we ask, to me, are transportation vehicles into the future or bring the future into the present. But it's challenging. Very challenging.
Well, we need to build mechanisms that have both transparency and accountability to do more on the web. A great deal of money has been raised individually, the dollar-by-dollar amounts for political candidates through the web. And there's no reason why money can't be raised the same way for business ventures and not just candidates. But there's some legal issues to get solved and some accountability. So really, a lot of structural work needs to be done to affect the kind of rainmaking that you're talking about.
Yes.
But I think it's really quite doable, but it won't coalesce around any particular project until that project itself is articulated.
What you call variated too, right?
Yeah, well, it's got to be sticky. So money sticks to it as well as people, and the kind of commitment that will last during the hard times.
Yes.
One of the things that entrepreneurs have in spades is the capacity to think positively even when everything looks hopeless with their product or their idea.
Tell me about it.
They just keep going.
Yeah, how is that possible? How do we do it?
They have belief in what they're doing. They really believe in what they're doing.
It's a funny thing on the web. It's a new show, and people want to know, what's the distribution? And of course, the new distribution is that it's new distribution. We are just building it, and we're building it each week.
Do you archive the conversations so people can tap into them later?
Absolutely.
Well,
every single show is archived. So that's part of it. There's just tremendous, there's so much greatness happening in the world that to be attracted to it and open to it and have a love for bringing it in and bringing it through to the people, given where we are right now in humanity. I mean, you want to talk about terrorism and, you want to talk about global warming. If even an hour were given to articulate the truth about global warming without any type of advocacy this way or that way, and you brought in some of the main people who have their handle on this in the world, what's really going on, to translate it to the public, I can assure you, the mainstream, most of the public would not be worried about terrorism the way they would be concerned and want something done about what's happening with climate changes and weather and global warming. That's an example, a very real example. When somebody high up in global warming says, In 20 years, the way it's going and the non-attention to this matter could put Europe in an ice age.